You're listening to XVGM Radio. Welcome to XVGM Radio, where the bits keep coming. I'm Justin.
And I'm Mike.
And this is episode 103, Pinball Video Games VGM. That's what it says in the document.
Yeah, it's a fact. That's what we're talking about today. Pinball video games, video pinball, if you will.
Yes.
This was brought to us by Justin.
Yeah.
The guy sitting right next to me over here.
Yeah, not on Zoom.
Not on Zoom. That's true.
In
we
the same
are
room.
live and Charles in charge.
Yes.
Of our days and our nights. So, I got really pumped and excited when you suggested this one. We could honestly do like 1,000 episodes on this topic.
There's a lot, yeah.
There's so many amazing pinball tracks. There's so many games that have entirely great pinball soundtracks. Mm-hmm. So maybe we'll explore one in the future. Yeah, for sure. This track that we opened up with, though, you picked Advanced Pinball Simulator for the Commodore 64. This came out in 1989, and then that was the title screen by David Dunn.
Yes.
Why'd you pick this one? I liked it, but why'd you pick it?
Partly because it's one of the earlier video pinball titles, but also I really like a lot of the sounds that come out of that SID chip. And so I kind of wanted to open on something nice and easy to listen to.
Yeah.
Not that anything else that we have is particularly hard to listen to.
Sure.
But I generally know if it's coming off a Commodore 64, I'm probably going to enjoy it because it's going to have that buzzy bass, which this did. Mm-hmm. And then it had a really kind of catchy, floaty melody.
Very happy.
Very happy, yes.
Very cheerful.
Very early VGM, too.
Yes, yeah. A lot of early VGM was very, like, fun and silly and very, like, lighthearted. Not a lot of it. I guess maybe like Space Invaders had some more like kind of Jaws kind of music, like doot 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 doot. Didn't Space Invaders have that music?
I don't know. Maybe some of the later versions. I feel like Space Invaders, Galaga, a lot of those really early arcades were simple enough that they didn't start with any music.
Yeah, a lot of them didn't.
Especially because Space Invaders was like early. That's like, I mean, it's not Pong early, obviously, because Pong came first. But when I think of like Galaga and Millipede and Centipede, those ones, there's a lot more color to them. And the original Space Invaders, I think, was on similar to like Asteroids and Pong. It was like just black and white vector graphics.
I could have sworn that it had like a boop, 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 boop. And then like when they got closer, it was like boop, 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 boop. I don't know.
You could be right. I don't think I ever recognized that as music.
Okay.
Because every time you hear that boop, boop, they move. So I just assumed that those noises were them moving, and then as you remove more and as they get lower, they move faster. So that noise speeds up.
Yeah,
but you could be right.
Much like the early games like Metroid and stuff like that, where like there was a much more like ambient kind of vibe to a lot of the music, and like sound effects were used much more heavily in place of music. So with something like that. Yeah, that probably makes more sense. We're getting wildly off topic, but that's okay, because I think what you've brought here with Advanced Pinball Simulator is an early form of a very cheerful, happy sound. I mean, pinball in and of itself came out of, the early era, like pre... computer space or whatever that game's called. I can't remember. The first video game ever was like Computer Space or something like that.
Oh, I always thought it was Pong.
Pong was the first, like one of the first for sure.
Yeah.
But there was like Space Computer or Computer Space. It was an arcade machine.
Yeah.
It had a really funky, like space age kind of design to the actual arcade cabinet. But pinball in and of itself kind of came long before that.
Right. That's what I was going to say. Like pinballs, I feel is video games before video games.
Right.
And I mean, most modern pinball machines basically have a video game in them.
Right.
A lot of the ones that I see, either at Barcade or any of the places around here, you play the pinball game, then sometimes you get the ball into a special hole, and you'll have to play like a mini game on the screen.
Right.
There's a very, very cool blending of all of that.
Yeah, I mean, like, we could really dive deep into the origins of pinball's history, but we're not going to, because this isn't a pinball episode. This is a video pinball episode. Right. One day, though, we will do a pinball episode, because Justin pointed out to me that there's a lot of really great music in those games, too, which I was kind of like, I've always played pinball in arcades, so I've never been able to hear it.
I feel like pinball machines are usually some of the loudest devices in any.
I always hear the click clackiness and then the sound effects, like the blah, 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 like the score tallies and stuff like that. But yeah, I never really recognized any of the music from any pinball games I've ever played. Yeah,
that's fair.
So it wasn't until like the early 80s that we started seeing stuff like video pinball kind of pop up, like early to mid 80s. And as the 80s went on, more and more pinball games started to be introduced to game consoles and PC computers and things like that. We have kind of picked a lot of variety in this episode. Some stuff you'll definitely recognize, other stuff not so much. So I think we've got a good variety here.
Yeah, and I mean, it spans a lot of it too. Like, we didn't go all the way back. Like, I think one of the first video pinball games is actually Video Pinball, which came out in 1980 for Atari.
There you go.
But there wasn't really any music on that. So, we're starting in the late 80s. They still make video pinball games.
Sure,
there was one that we will cover a bit later. But and again, I think the music is kind of all over the spectrum. When I think of video pinball, I think generally of I think the one that everybody knows, and that's the one that like came with Windows XP.
Oh yeah, was that XP or was that 95?
Maybe it was 95.
I think it was 95 because I remember playing that on my old 95 machine. You're talking about the 3D space pinball? Yeah. So this game, Advanced Pinball, you said came out in the Commodore 64. It looks like it also got ported elsewhere. The
Ataris, ZX Spectrum, the Amstrad.
Yeah.
I said Commodore 64 specifically because that's the version that we played.
Sure.
It came out on Atari, ZX Spectrum, and Amstrad CPC in 1988, and then on the Commodore 64 in 1989. So technically, the Commodore 64 version was a port.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, it's not a whole lot to say about it. It's an early video pinball game from the late 80s. The overall theme of the pinball table is magic and wizardry, so it's kind of fantasy based, but it doesn't look like there's more than one table. You're playing a single board basically, and it changes up a little bit as time goes on, but it's not like it massively changes everything. Like you might get different light ups in different areas of the screen. But very, very flat in 2D, not isometric like a lot of later and 3D versions tend to go, where you're looking kind of at an angle at the table instead of like straight down. Which is to me a little bit more natural, because when I play pinball, I'm not directly above. I don't know. Sitting up, but like I'm not directly above the table looking down. I am down at the bottom where the flippers are.
Interesting.
Up the table. So
I actually prefer being straight down.
Really?
If I'm looking at pinball, because I want to be able to see everything, and I feel like when I'm looking at it like I would a pinball table, I feel like I do worse.
Really?
Because of the change of perspective. This one, I guess you can collect the word magic to get points. There's different potions. There's a weather potion and a magic cottage in this. So there's all the different trapdoors as well. So it looks pretty basic, but overall, I definitely get vibes of maybe some like slightly newer pinball games, like the original Pinball on NES, which is like my personal go-to. Like, I love that game. I don't know why. It's so much fun. I love the sound effects on it. It's just a lot of fun to play. Who composed this one?
So David Dunn is the composer on this one. He started back in 1984 doing Commodore 16 plus/4. I don't know why it says Commodore 16 plus/4. So he started out way back in 1984 doing music on a game called Catacombs. And he's done almost everything in his career is Commodore 64 with a little bit of Atari and Amstrad CPC thrown in there for fun. In 1984, did a game called Dark Tower. He did Minipeds in 1985, which I guess is a port of the Millipedes or Centipedes.
Oh yeah, Mini-Pedis.
Mini-Pedis?
Yeah.
Mani-Pedis?
Mini-Pedis. It's a mani-pedi, but it's very, very small.
For tiny toes.
For tiny toes.
Thai boxing in 1986, Karate Chop in 1987, this in 1988, and he also did the Atari 8-bit music for this in 1988, and then his final credit is for what we just played, Advanced Pinball Simulator 1989, Commodore 64.
Right. Let's move into your first pick. What do you got for us?
All right, so my first real pick of this episode is going to be from Super Pinball. This is a Famicom exclusive, came out only in Japan in 1988. The track is just known as Track 3, and we were unable to find a composer for this one. Welcome back. That was Super Pinball, no relation to regular pinball on the NES.
Or Super Pinball on the Super Nintendo.
Also true. This is a Famicom game that came out in 1988. The track was Track 3, and the composer is unknown.
Yeah, it's kind of confusing because the people that are credited for this one, there's multiple different people credited, but none of them are composers. So.
Yeah. There's like 6 people in credits, and none of them have any audio credits. They're all just like developers or programmers.
Developers, right.
Thank you, Stephen.
Yeah. This was a bit of a repetitive track.
Yeah.
This really takes me back, amazingly enough, to our first episode. This is a pick that you would have picked for like our first episode, which is ironic because 2 days ago, we're recording this on the 14th of June, 2023. 2 days ago was the release of the first episode of XVGM Radio, which
5
was
years ago.
5 years ago.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. Happy 5 years, Justin.
Happy 5-year anniversary.
I really got a sense of like that track that you picked on that episode. It was that Tom Sawyer track that you picked. I remember it being really repetitive. And I remember being like, oh man, what did I get myself into? Is this guy just going to pick a bunch of like super repetitive tracks? And it turns out I'm probably picking
mostly
more repetitive tracks anyways. I think I picked more repetitive tracks than you, but
yeah, that's fair.
But I did like this. I just feel like it felt more of like a lead off to something else. Like this is the song that you hear when you're about to like launch your ball, so to speak, you know?
Fair. Yeah. I can see that. I picked this one because it reminded me of something else. Unfortunately, I can't remember what it reminded me of. I want to say it has vague like Contra vibes.
Okay.
Just in that main melody. But yeah, I mean, you're right. That main melody is it does get a bit repetitive. They change it up a little bit. It's very, very samey with a little bit of variation on the sameness.
This game looks cool, though, visually.
Yeah.
I mean, it looks really pretty. Like, great use of color.
Yeah, a lot of the game screens that I've seen are very, very blue and pink. But the graphics that they choose to use are really interesting because it seems like the game has like a cars and like a racing theme.
Okay.
So the background of the machine, I guess you could say, or the floor of the machine, I don't even know if that's the right word, will change up and kind of have like a video playing of like a car driving in the background, stuff like that.
Oh, that's neat.
So there are 4 different screens that the ball can be sent to. I'm guessing those are kind of like boards. If you hit the ball in a certain place, it'll get sent and the screen will change.
Right.
And you'll have like a different board to play on.
Yeah.
One of those boards is only accessible via a warp, which is interesting. I'm guessing there's just like you have to hit the ball in a very specific spot.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
I mean, pinball games are notorious for that. Like you have to hit this exact spot if you want, thing to come out of the box in the Addams Family pinball, or if you want to do any of the really cool stuff. The game is also kind of infamous for the display of mahjong titles at the very beginning of the game, despite the fact that the game has nothing to do with mahjong.
I was gonna say I saw that screen and I was like, wait, what? Why mahjong?
I mean, it's a Japanese exclusive, and so I'm guessing that Soft Machine is a Japanese company, or at the very least, it was published by Coconuts Japan. So it may have just been part of the company that made it or published it, and they like mahjong.
Should have gave it to Sam Goody instead.
Yeah. Or Sam Ash.
Yeah. At the beginning of the game, it says that the player is given an incomplete mahjong hand with one missing tile. Then they are shown the tile that will complete their hand, and locating that tile is the goal of the pinball game. Oh. So there you go. That's why the tiles are there. When the tile is found, the game ends immediately. So, yeah. So the tiles do have a very specific role according to Moby Games.
Okay, that's good to know.
Yep.
For being an early type of pinball game, control is difficult. It's very hard to get the ball to go where you want it to go.
Don't I know it?
Yeah, it's you want the ball in the hole over there, and it goes to the other hole on the other side.
That's it.
It's awful.
Yeah, but and when you get older, the ball just sinks and sinks and sinks, and
But yeah, I got nothing else to say about that. I guess.
All right. Okay.
But so again, unknown composer on this one, so nothing really to talk about there. But next up, we have a fairly famous pinball game.
Yeah, we do. This is Sonic the Hedgehog Spinball, also known as Sonic Spinball to fans. This came out in the Genesis in 1993. The stage is Stage 1, Toxic Caves. There's other great tracks. I think this is a banger, so I had to pick it. Barry Bloom, Brian Coburn, Howard Drawson, and We Multimedia, it's spelled O-U-I, are the credited composers. Let's jam out to this one. Hey, you're back. That was a jam from Sonic the Hedgehog Spinball. That was the Genesis game that came out in 1993. That was Stage 1, Toxic Caves by Barry Bloom, Brian Coburn, Howard Drawson, and Wii Multimedia. I couldn't find any info on Wii Multimedia. I tried. Tried my hardest. Let everybody down. So sorry. Yeah. Just like that Twarnmp, right? I know you were not liking this one.
It wasn't as bad as other things that I've disliked.
Okay, all right. Interesting.
It's the nicest way to word that, I think.
I love this soundtrack in game. I don't know what it is about it. I have super nostalgic memories of playing this one in Toys R Us.
Yeah.
And I remember the Lifesaver commercial for it. Lifesavers did an ad thing for it where like you could send away to try to win a copy of the game and like a whole Genesis pack or whatever. And I remember submitting to try to win it because I was like, I'll get a Genesis and play Sonic Spinball. Like, I'll do it.
I gotta say, I remember having fun with the game Sonic Spinball. So I think that kind of just colored some of my memory. And if full disclosure, I don't always listen to all the tracks, particularly the tracks that you pick before we record.
Yeah,
obviously
I do the same.
I was like, obviously I listen to the tracks that I pick before I record because that'd be weird.
Right. Yeah, that would be strange.
Just picking them out of the air.
Yeah.
We could do blind listen sometime, but that's a different thing.
Yeah, I mean we did that with the Demo's Quest episode.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I remember having fun with this game. I just don't remember the music. So I saw Sonic Spinball and I was like, oh man, Sonic games usually have really good music. And I will say like that was probably the biggest disappointment of the year. But no, I will say there are definitely things that I enjoyed about this track. Like it doesn't bring me back to playing the game because I just don't remember the music.
Sure.
But there were a lot of things that I think were done really well, and it was a mixture of some really cool ideas and some interestingly timed Twarnmp, both on like the bass parts, and then just like the keyboard synth sound really cool to me until they get farty. Like that, you were kind of like dancing along with it.
Are you talking about the
Yeah, well, it's the lower part.
Oh, the one that's like.
Yeah.
The do.
Yeah, it sounds like an electrified synth to me, and then just when it gets to the lower end, it just gets really farty, and I was like, oh, come on.
See, I like that one because it's really kind of gritty sounding. That no.
Yeah, I like it until it sounds farty. Is the problem.
And then it kind of rolls into that, that do. It's such a funky, fresh bass line. Love it. It's so good. Makes me want to dance. I specifically bought the vinyl for this soundtrack because I was like, yo, the music in this game is straight fire. Like, it's so good. It's super underrated, and everybody craps on it because it's a Gems driver. I believe it's a Gems driver.
This is a Gems driver.
Yeah, I'm almost positive it's a Gems driver game. But anyways, this game is a Sonic pinball game that was designed based on like stuff like the Spring Yard Zone and Casino Night Zone levels.
So many good ideas. And again, the gameplay is really fun. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I mean, it's very stiff at times. I find trying to get Sonic to go where you want him to go is kind of difficult. It's one of those games that you really have to figure out. You got to spend a lot of time with it because there are certain things that you need to do to advance in levels.
Oh, yes. I remember, our mutual friend Eric loves all Sonic games, and I remember watching him play through some of that.
He is insanely good at that game.
That's an understatement.
Yeah, like I sat there and basically watched him beat the entire game, and my jaw was just on the floor. I was like, how did you do that? Like, so yeah, it's a fun game, great music, and it's got fun visuals. The first level is this track. It starts off, it's a very grimy kind of look to start off with. It's very reminiscent of if you've seen the Saturday morning cartoon for Sonic. The more dark, gloomy kind of areas in that.
That was my favorite cartoon.
Yeah, that was a good cartoon. So it reminds me a lot of that. There's toxic waste everywhere. So you're basically going through the caves, bouncing all over the place, trying to get to where you need to go to unlock. You have to hit certain pieces of the level to unlock unlock it to like unlatch specific places so that you can move higher up on the board and stuff like that. So it's a well-designed game. I think it's pretty fun to play, and the music's good. So I would say, and it's also super cheap now, and it's in a lot of Sonic collections and stuff like that. So it's worth checking out if you haven't before.
Oh yeah, no, for sure.
Barry Bloom is the first credit on this one, and his audio credits date back all the way to Panic, which came out in the Sega CD in 1993. And he also did some of the music on Wild Woody, another Sega CD game. He moved on later to games on the Nintendo 64 like Wheel of Fortune and Jeopardy, doing music and sound design on those. He did a lot of the Army Men games, actually, so it looks like he went over to 3DO to work for a while. His final game that he worked on was Robocalypse. I almost said Robocopalypse, but
Robocopalypse, your favorite game.
Robocopalypse. Robocalypse.
Yes.
That's so hard to say. Even looking at it, I'm like,
you need robot lips.
I do. I knew. Robocalypse Beaver Defense is the name of the game.
Beaver Defense?
Beaver Defense. Whew. Yeah, it's a WiiWare game. That's it. For him, at least. Brian Coburn started off doing music for the Menacer 6 game cartridge for the Menacer light gun for the Genesis.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it came with one of those like 6-game mini-game kind of games.
Like Super Scope 6?
Yeah, basically the Super Scope 6, but mini-games, for the Menacer. Then he moved on to NFL Sports Talk Football 93, starring Joe Montana. He did speech, music, and sounds on it. He also did music for games like Echo the Dolphin, Cyborg Justice, Gen War on the Sega Saturn. I think that's how you say it. Gen War or Gen War. It's Gen.
Oh, yeah, Gen.
Yeah, I think it's Gen. He also did music on Wild Woody, but more so gameplay effects. So I'm thinking like sound effects during gameplay. He continued working for Sega with games like Mr. Bones, doing sound effects and voices and audio programming. He's mostly a sound designer in the later stages of his career, doing sound effects and coordinating sound effects for stuff like Death Jr. And his last game was Dungeon Lords MMXII or MM12, I believe it is. And that was in 2012. Howard Drossen, pretty famous name for Sega, was largely responsible for like Sonic and Knuckles, doing the soundtrack on that. Comic Zone, he did a bunch of sound effects, music, and character voices. Games like Die Hard Arcade, Vigilante 8 Second Offense, so he left Sega to work on games like that. Baldur's Gate, he did the second Baldur's Gate game along with, it looks like, all the expansions and extra stuff. Afro Samurai on the Xbox 360 in 2009. He came back to Sega to work on Sonic and the Black Knight, and his last music credit is for Baldur's Gate 2 Enhanced Edition, but right before that he did Splatterhouse, the reboot, on that one as well. Did the original score for that, not the licensed tracks, of course.
Well, yeah.
And then Wii Multimedia, no info on. So that's all she wrote. But you know what? You're about to take me to a fantasy.
Yes. So this game is a sequel to. Wait, no. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember the order in which they happened. Yeah. This is a sequel to a pinball game that shows up on a lot of people's favorite video pinball lists.
We played a track off of Pinball Dreams.
Yeah. Did we?
A long time ago.
Oh.
Yes. Yeah. We played a track off of it. I think it was during the Amiga episode.
Oh.
With Nico. We played a track off of Pinball Dreams, and it was such a good track, and that was immediately one that I was going to go to, and I was like, we've already played it, darn.
Yeah. Oh, man, that's good game, good soundtrack, and this is the follow-up, Pinball Fantasy. This came out in the Amiga in 1992. The track is Speed Devils, and it's by Olaf Gustafsson. Hey there, that was Speed Devils from 1992's Pinball Fantasies. That came out in the Amiga, and it was composed by Olaf Gustafsson.
Indeed. And you cheated.
I did.
You cheated.
4 tracks, the price of 1.
That's it. But you know what? I did it too when I picked Pinball Dreams way back when. So I accept. It was.
We're even now.
Yeah, we're even. Exactly. I like this one. I will say that initial car sound, whatever that was super farty.
Yes, it was. Like, yeah, for all my complaining about the fartiness of the Sonic Spinball track.
Yeah, that was straight up toots.
The cars were tooting along.
Yeah, but like the sound effects did get better and got implemented a little bit more into the song as it kind of went on.
Yeah. I don't understand why the ones in the beginning are like that. I feel like maybe they were trying to do F1 cars, and then later on they were just kind of doing more regular cars or like NASCAR cars. Hard to say, but yeah, I completely agree. Like the car sounds at the end do not match the car sounds in the beginning.
Is NASCAR? Would you say NASCARs or would you say NASCAR cars? Because that's what you said, and I'm thinking about it now. And
well,
I'm like,
I also
wait
said
a minute.
F1, and they're
I know.
F1 cars.
But I mean, the way that somebody would say NASCAR cars, is it just NASCARs or is it NASCAR cars?
I would say it's NASCAR cars because NASCAR is the event.
See, NASCAR cars
sounds weird.
Sounds weird to me. It's like, yeah.
Yeah, no, I get it, but
NASCARs makes more sense.
I think NASCARs is more efficient.
Yeah,
but,
yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Anyways, so, I think that this was a track that got better as it went along. Like, the beginning I was not really a fan of, and then as the track got a little bit more funkier, the bass was a little bit more prominent, I was like, all right, we're getting somewhere.
See, no, I like the beginning, because the beginning has, I feel, a more prominent, like, slap bass sound, so that just kind of played to my interests. I mean, I don't think that it started strong and ended weak by any means.
Right.
I thought it was a pretty good group of songs, regardless.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I really like just what they did with the bass in the opening, in particular. And then as it goes on, I think I like the addition of the different car sounds and like the crashing and the switching up. Again, I completely had forgotten about the Pinball Dreams track that you played in the Amiga episode, which is a shame because that was a great track as well. Because of the fact that this was like one track that was technically multiple tracks, I just thought it was kind of silly and kind of sneaky. And so the fact that you were like, oh yeah, I played a Pinball Dreams track a while ago, I was like, oh, okay, well, now I don't feel as bad, but I thought it was silly.
Right. I got you. Cool.
Pinball Dreams is on a lot of people's, best video pinball game lists, and this is as well. Some of the ports weren't as great. Like the Amiga, the Amiga version, the CD32 version, the DOS version, I think all played pretty much the same. The Game Boy and the SNES versions, Jaguar, not quite as much. The SNES version doesn't look like it did quite as well because it had some stutter. And the Game Boy version also not great ports.
It's like there was a Game Boy Advance version, which I gotta say, I can only imagine how bad the music probably sounds.
Oh my god! Yeah,
translating this to the Game Boy Advance, it just doesn't. I could be totally wrong. I mean, Manfred Linsner did some amazing Game Boy Advance stuff. True. Maybe it'll be good. But
yeah, but some of those ports actually included boards from this game and the previous game, Pinball Dream.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think that's because things like the SNES and the Game Boy did not get Pinball Dream, so they were like, oh, let's put some of this other stuff in there and add more to the game.
That's nice.
Yeah, but Pinball Fantasies had 4 different boards. Each with their own, goals and styles. So there's a Party Land board where it looks like a kind of like a theme park, Ferris wheel, or maybe a carnival, and you want to get letters that spell either party or crazy. The Speed Devils board, which is what we just heard the music for, is very focused, like my first track, on cars and racing. How about that? I didn't even plan that. And as you're playing, you're hitting the ball into different areas and you're gaining speed and overtaking other cars. So you want to get your car into the lead position. There's $1 Billion Game Show, which is like a game show style table where you want to try and win prizes and get combinations of different ramps. And then the fourth board is called Stones and Bones. It's based on a haunted house. You want to light up different banks of lights and targeting where it says like Stone Bone, and then kind of cycle through those modes.
Stone Bone.
Okay,
then.
Yeah.
Cool.
But I mean, aside from that, fairly standard pinball game. Nothing, nothing super crazy. I think a lot of these early games, they were more focused on trying to translate the experience of pinball into a video game, as opposed to trying to expand on it and do things that you wouldn't be able to do in like a real pinball game.
Were you any good at pinball?
I wouldn't call myself a pinball wizard. No. I used to play a lot of pinball when I was a kid, but it was like as the video games got better, I had less and less interest in pinball, and I've kind of had a resurgence more recently because anytime I go to like either GameCraft or Barcade or any still functional arcade that has pinballs, I see like a lot of the newer ones. Like there's like some good TMNT ones.
Yeah, there's some really cool new ones. Yeah,
like there's some really really nifty pinball machines. But I think my favorites are Star Trek: The Next Generation. There's a pinball machine for that from like the 90s, I want to say.
Okay.
And that's just got a weird nostalgia place in my heart because, one, I like Star Trek, but two, so when I was going to college, my dorm hall, you walk in, there's the front desk, you got to show your card to go through, and then there's like a long hallway to these elevators. It was a really tall building, I think like 15 stories or something.
Okay.
And in that hallway, they had snack machines, and they had some pinball game that I can't remember, and the Star Trek Next Generation pinball game. And
so you probably spent a lot of time on it.
Yeah, we spent a lot of time with that. The Addams Family pinball game, for one, my understanding is it's a relatively rare game, despite the fact that I feel like I see it everywhere I go. But it's a really nifty game. I mentioned, Thing coming out of his box. Like that's a thing that you can do is you light up these different lights, and then you hit the ball in around back, and as it comes around the road, Thing pops out of his box, grabs your ball, and pulls it in, and stores it for like a multi-ball.
Okay.
There's probably a few others, but those are the ones that those are the top two that are always the top of my mind when I'm thinking about pinball. What about you?
I was not really ever a pinball guy. I liked video pinball. As I said before, the first pinball game I ever played was Pinball on NES.
Oh,
and it's got a super nostalgic place in my heart.
Yeah.
Other than that, I mean, just the occasional video pinball game. Pinball of the Dead on, I think it's GBA. I think it's CI.
Oh. Is that a House of the Dead pinball?
Yeah, and then some of the games that we're talking about here, like, Sonic Spinball, stuff like that.
Yeah.
But as far as actual pinball tables go, Super Mario World, or Super Mario Brothers, or whatever it was called. Super Mario World, I think it was called. Whatever it was. It was the Super Mario pinball game. And man, I loved that thing. I remember going to Chuck E. Cheese all the time and playing it. Like, it was the only pinball game that I spent a significant amount of time playing.
That makes sense. It was a Mario-based pinball machine, and you
I
were
was
a
Mario
kid.
nut. That's it. So, yeah, cool. So Olaf Gustafsson.
Yeah, so Olaf, we did talk about in that Amiga episode.
Yes.
But again, started all the way back in 1992 on Pinball Dreams with the Amiga, doing music and sound effects. This one, the follow-up to Pinball Fantasies, Pinball Illusions in 1995, did the music on that as well. A whole lot of pinball in his early days. 1996, True Pinball on the Sega Saturn and PlayStation. Looks like he is still active, credited on re-releases of Pinball Dreams and Pinball Fantasy on the iPhone, PlayStation 3. Somewhat recently, most recent game is Ultra Core on the PS4 in 2020, doing music and sound effects.
Cool.
So, yeah, still kicking.
Nice.
All right. Looks like we're getting a call on our patron line.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Let's go ahead and take that call. Caller, you are on the air. What do you want to hear?
Hey there, Mike and Justin. This is Scotty McElhone coming at you. I would love if you guys could play from True Pinball, all caps, from the PS1 in 1995, track number 2. I didn't have this game growing up, and actually I hadn't played any pinball games on the PS1 itself, but came across this one and I thought had to request it. Awesome. Thanks a lot, guys.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, for sure. So this is going to be, as Scotty said, True Pinball. Came out on the PS1 and the Sega Saturn, looks like in 1995. Track 2 is the name of the track, and it was composed by Olaf Gustafsson. Yet again, let's do it.
All right. Oh, welcome back. Yeah, you're still here. You didn't go off to some saloon and start drinking. That was Scotty's pick, Scott McElhone's pick. True Pinball, the PS1 and Saturn game that came out in 1995. That was Olaf Gustafsson's track, yet again. And that was track 2.
Yeah. I like this one. I mean, you hit the nail on the head right there with talking about a saloon. Like, it sounds like a player piano, or at the very least an upright piano for sure. There were also a number of other things in there. I feel like there was some organ going on at certain points. And like that bass line, I don't really know what I got out of that bass line. It didn't feel like a walking bass or like an upright bass or anything, which would have definitely added to the like saloon feel.
It felt kind of 50s sock hop.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
It was a weird combo of 50s sock hop meets old Western music.
Yeah. Meets VGM vinyl.
Yeah. I even said to Justin in between while we were listening to the song, I was like, is that an artificial vinyl like record sound? He's like, yep.
Yeah, the popping and crackling.
Yep.
Really adds a bit of warmth to the overall track.
See, I have to see how this plays out in the game itself, but man, that was really distracting for me. I don't know what it is, because I've heard, I collect vinyl, and I buy sometimes old records from like the 70s, the 60s, the 80s, They're usually in not great condition, and so you'll hear the crackling, the popping and all that. It doesn't happen as often, now that I have an actual record cleaner, it doesn't really happen as much, but there are definitely still vinyls that I have, for example, Arthur Brown's Fire, which is a great album and great song. I'm not sure if it's called Fire, the album itself, but that song it's fire, straight up.
Yeah.
That one crackles left and right for me, like all the time, and it doesn't bother me, because I'm like, in my head, I'm like, no, this is old vinyl. This is how it's supposed to sound.
I was going to say, it's kind of what you expect. I mean,
a
lot of the newer stuff, and especially if people are keeping good care of their records, you don't really hear it as much. But that has never bothered me about vinyl until it's bad enough to skip, or loop or repeat. Like that obviously gets me, because then you really you have to get up, you have to do something about it.
Right.
But the kind of soft crackling and popping, as long as it's not like overbearing or overpowering, it adds to kind of this warmth of the vinyl listening feel. And I mean, you hear us talk about that sometimes at the XVGM After Dark. So
yeah, for sure. Which you should attend if you don't already.
Absolutely.
Yes. So, I don't know. That's really distracting, and to the point where I was like, man, if I heard this in game, I don't know how I'd feel about that. Because it's two different mediums, It'd be like, what it's like, maybe it doesn't annoy me as much, but in Double Dragon Neon, when you get the different cassette tapes, you can switch between the tracks and switch between the power-ups, and they play little, 14-second loops or whatever of a song that's very inspired by an 80s, real song or whatever, of different genres and whatnot. But, there's a tape flip sound, like a cassette tape flip.
Oh, that's
because,
funny.
like you're taking a tape out and then flipping it to the other side. So that doesn't really bother me, though, because it's the aesthetic of, hey, this is a cassette player sound effect. It's not playing in the background during the song the entire time, whereas this is. And so I think that if I was listening to this in-game, I don't know how I'd feel about it if I heard that vinyl sound.
Yeah.
I get the aesthetic and the purpose of it, but it just weirds me out, I think. But overall, I like the song. It was good.
Yeah, this game is kind of interesting. So we mentioned, also composed by Olaf Gustafsson, and the reason is because True Pinball is an enhanced version.
Okay.
The main source that we use said 1995. Wikipedia says 1996. In Europe, March 1996. In North America, October 1996. So I don't know why.
It came out between 95 and 96.
Yeah, I'm just like the dates are more specific on Wikipedia, so maybe they're right.
Oh, interesting.
Either way, this game is just an enhanced version of Pinball Illusions, which was the sequel to Pinball Dreams, or a sequel to Pinball Fantasies, which was the sequel to Pinball Dreams.
Okay.
So, and I mean, those are, as we discussed, the Amiga games. Pinball Illusions is also an Amiga 1200 and 4000 and Amiga CD32 game.
Right.
So all of this stuff, very, very much related. And so there are 4 tables in, it says, for True Pinball. With 4 tables, they are the same ones featured in the later versions of Illusions, but with improved visual and audio. And each table has been recreated in 3D and can be played either at an angle or from a top-down view. Okay. So I guess it took the Pinball Illusions game and kind of amped it up a little bit, which is cool. But it looks like it didn't really get super well reviewed. Not like it got terrible reviews, but it seems that the opinion is that this is kind of an average pinball game, not a great pinball game.
Right.
So
okay,
very, very neat. I mean, at some point, I'm going to need to track down and figure out how to play some of these, because it's been so long since I've played good video pinball, and now that we're talking about all this stuff, I really, really want to go and play some of these things.
Do you have a PS1 or PS2?
I do.
You have a PS3?
Yes.
I think PS3 is backwards compatible with PS1. So
that's right.
Yeah, buddy. There you go.
So yeah, we'll have to pick this up. I was more thinking though of the Amiga ones, the Pinball Dreams, Pinball Fantasies and stuff.
Yeah, that would just be like Amiga emulators. Yeah.
So nifty.
Indeed.
All right, so we'll move into my next pick here. This is going to be Pro Pinball Time Shock. This came out on the PS1 as well in 1997. The track is going to be The Present Time Zone, and it was composed by Jake Burns and Bruce Foxton. Welcome back. That was The Present Time Zone by Boston. No. By Jake Burns and Bruce Foxton from 1997's Pro Pinball Time Shock. And that came out on the PS1.
Wild.
Yeah. I thought I had actually played this way back on Justin's Picks episode.
Oh.
And when I went back to take a look, I hadn't, because there were just other things that kind of crowded this game out. But this is another game that, if you were to ask me what are the games that you think of when you think of video pinball, this is the first thing that comes to mind.
Oh, interesting.
For me, yeah, because this I played a lot of in high school. This was another PS1 game that my mother got for me for Christmas, or it might have been my dad. I don't remember at this point, and I don't have the game anymore, unfortunately. So I used to play a lot of this whenever I had a chance. The music was great, the game itself was great, and there's a whole line of Pro Pinball something. Pro Pinball The Web, Pro Pinball Big Race USA, Pro Pinball Fantastic Journey. I haven't played any of the other ones, but I really enjoyed this one.
How do you not own this?
When I was moving from living in a house with friends in Orange to living by myself in Wallingford, one of the people that was helping me move accidentally mistook a case of PlayStation 1, 2, and just like older games and brought it to Goodwill.
Oh, no.
So that's like all of my PS1 games, all of my PS2 games disappeared that day. And I've gotten a good chunk of them back. Like, the hardest thing to get back, like I could probably find this for a decent price, but the hardest thing for me to get back is any of the JRPGs. Like Legend of Legaia, I'll probably never see that again because all PS1 JRPGs are stupid expensive. I'm lucky I got the Final Fantasy 7, 8, and 9. I think I got Kartia, Wild Arms, Xenogears, and a couple others, but at this point it's just like not even worth looking.
Yeah, I hear you.
But I really should try to track this down because, like I said, I remember having a ton of fun with this.
I'll keep an eye out for it when I go to Too Many Games.
Oh, thank you. We can probably find it at like Game Exchange, to be honest.
Probably.
I don't think it's a hard game to find.
Yeah.
So the theme of this game, if the word time shock wasn't obvious, is time travel. So there's a time machine event or button or bumper or something on the table that will cause you to like build up energy, and then, you know, hitting it at the right time will either send you to like the distant future, ancient Rome, prehistoric age, or the present day. But you start out in the present day with this awesome music. So completing certain objectives allows you to travel between those different time zones. And again, like many of the things that we're talking about here, this is another game that tries to faithfully adapt a regular pinball machine to a video game, except for, you know, the changing boards, which I feel like that's one thing a number of games around this time, like throughout the 90s, if there were pinball games, they were still doing the thing where it's like, okay, this is pinball, we're trying to make realistic pinball in a video game, but, you know, to change it up, we're going to change up the board. So, like, you get that kind of a thing.
Right.
And I like those features.
Yeah, that's pretty neat.
Yeah.
I gotta say, I don't think I like this song, though.
Oh, no?
Yeah, I think it's mostly, it's not necessarily the composition. I mean, the composition was kind of weak. It does remind me a bit of that C64, very kind of happy-go-lucky kind of style. But I think the thing that really bothered me about it was the tone of the synths. Just very blah.
That's
very
kind of
MIDI.
fair. Yes, they're very MIDI.
Yeah.
But I feel like partly the not greatness of the synths is buried in what I thought was some really good guitar stuff. Because that was one of the things that kind of threw me, I think, maybe the first few times that I heard the song, is it starts out sounding like a classic rock song. And the guitars are great, the percussion is good, and then those synths come in, and you're like, well, yeah.
That was a choice.
Yeah. Like that. It didn't really feel like it fit, because it felt like I thought that they were going with Red Book Audio, and maybe they did, maybe they just made a choice to use synths, but if not, then whatever sound driver they're using on the guitars is great and not so great on the synths. Or it is all Red Book, and they just made the choice to go with synths on that.
Yeah. It's just very, I don't know, it really took over the song and kind of put a bad taste in my ears.
That's fair.
All right, composers.
Composers, that's right. There are two of them. Jake Burns just has a few credits. Started out with Pro Pinball The Web in 1995, then did Time Shock in 97, and then in 2005, he actually wrote a song that was used in Tony Hawk's Underground called Suspect Device.
Oh, cool.
And that's all we have for Jake. Bruce Foxton, basically the same, except he didn't do anything for Tony Hawk. He just did Pro Pinball The Web and Pro Pinball Time Shock.
Okay, then. All right. Coming up on my next track, we're going to the Game Boy Color. This came out in 2000, and the name of the game is 3D Ultra Pinball. This track is called BGM 05, and it is by Score Music and Audio Arts. Hi there, I'm Moist Multiballs.
And I'm Bumpy McBumper.
Having trouble staying in the game long enough?
The game of pinball, of course.
We have just the thing to keep your bumpers bumping all night long.
Just call us at 1-900-288-0707 and we'll make all your dreams come true.
Your pinball dreams, obviously.
Oh, stop it, Moist.
No, you.
Only the most seasoned video game pinball specialists are available for you and only you. Grab a refreshing drink and get ready to learn the tricks of the trade to make your balls last all night long.
On the table, you mean, right, Bumpy?
The table? Balls on the table?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That doesn't sound right. I think you've got it wrong there, Moist.
Oh, yeah. I've got it wrong. All night long.
Anyway, call that number now and sell your financial soul to the Pinball All-Stars of your dreams. We're waiting for you. Pick up the phone!
Call 1-900-288-0707. Or don't, please. We don't actually know what that number goes to. Florida residents, ignore this warning and call no matter what. Utah subject to extra 10 cents a minute. Florida residents, $50 per second. Everyone else, 1 cent a minute. Vista, Mr. Card, and Starbucks gift cards as payment. Void where prohibited. All right, welcome back to our Pinball Video Games VGM episode, where we're talking about pinball video games. Yeah.
What a surprise.
Or video pinball games. And their music. That was 3D Ultra Pinball, and that came out on the Game Boy Color in 2000. That was BGM 05, and it's by Score Music and Audio Arts. I could find no information on either of those. The game in and of itself is also known as Thrill Ride or 3D Ultra Pinball Thrill Ride. It's a pinball game that was originally developed for the Mac and Windows. Then it got ported by Left Field Productions to the Game Boy Color, and it was published by Sierra Online. The 3D Ultra Pinball series is like a bunch of different pinball games. But this one in particular didn't get great reviews on the Game Boy Color. It's, kind of meh. They like the fact that, most of the critics that talked about the game like the fact that there was like multi-ball events and stuff like that. But overall, just kind of like mixed to negative reviews. Yeah. But this soundtrack slays. It's good stuff. Lots of Western arpeggios. Really good stuff.
It feels like a Commodore 64 tune to me.
Yeah.
Which is what I...
That Western sound, man, that European sound for composers, like that is their mark. Anything with arpeggios. As soon as I hear an arpeggio in a video game song, I'm like, oh, this has got to be a European composer.
That's fair.
Yeah. I don't know what it is about the arpeggio that they lean towards.
I think it's a very useful tool in just music creation. It's a really easy way to get the notes of the key out there and kind of do chords without playing multiple notes simultaneously. There's a lot of reasons to use them, but I just like the way it sounds on this chip.
I feel like the Game Boy Color was one of those last systems, or handhelds rather, that we really saw like a mega difference. Probably maybe like the Game Boy Advance and the DS as well a little bit, but like a major difference between the console versions of the games and the portable versions of them, in terms of like the style and the look and the music and everything. Just
how so? Because I always found the Game Boy Color specifically to basically just be a portable NES. Like there didn't seem to me to be much difference between an NES game and that same game on Game Boy Color.
Sure.
They redid Mario 1 and Mario 3
they redid Mario 1, but they didn't redo it. It was a port.
Right.
I guess what I mean is, I don't mean ports from NES stuff to the Game Boy Color. I mean down ports. Yeah. Gotcha. You know, if something came out in the PS1 and then, or the N64, and then it got a port to the Game Boy Color, that sort of thing.
Yep.
But a lot of European companies worked on a lot of those conversions. So we saw a lot more styles from European composers kind of implemented into those ports. Pretty neat. I don't really have any interest in playing this one, but man, the soundtrack is great. It was really hard to pick because there's a lot of really good songs in here. I also really like the two-step kind of vibe that it gives. The dun 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 dun. It's very bouncy, very fun. But not in the way, it's a little bit more serious, more like minor tones than what I would say, at least in that part in particular, than what we've been hearing from a lot of these other composers, especially like the Commodore 64 track, the track that you played recently. So, you know, I don't know. I don't know what it is about games, about video pinball games that they decide they want to make stuff sound happy-go-lucky, but
yeah, I mean,
I don't know.
I think by keeping you in a happier mood, they keep you in the game more.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah. I don't have anything else to talk about with this one because I don't know anything about the composing companies.
Right.
Must have been hired as the third-party companies to do just audio.
Well, then let's move on to my next pick here.
Yeah.
This is going to be from Pokemon Pinball, Ruby and Sapphire. This came out on the Game Boy Advance in 2003. The track is Red Table and was composed by Kazuya Suyama and Ayumi Sano. You're listening to XVGM Radio. Okay, that was Red Table from Pokemon Pinball Ruby and Sapphire, the 2003 Game Boy Advance game composed by Kazuya Suyama and Ayumi Sano.
I was getting some major side pocket vibes on this one. Really reminded me of the Genesis side pocket soundtrack. Really kind of jazzy, but big bandy as well. I really like this one, actually. I wish that the tones were a little stronger.
Yeah.
And the bass was a little less flat kind of sounding.
Yeah,
but
I think a lot of that has to do with the
hardware
Advance.
Yeah. But overall, I thought it was very fun.
Yeah. I found this one to be very kind of carefree and very lighthearted, which I enjoyed.
Yeah.
Not that we've been playing a lot of dark and grimy stuff.
Right.
But it's this one, similar to that first track. It was very upbeat and very playful. I don't know if it screams Pokemon to me. It definitely doesn't listening to the song. Yeah. Like listening to this without the context of knowing that it's from a Pokemon game, I never would have guessed that's from a Pokemon
I
pinball
absolutely
game.
wouldn't know that this was from Pokemon. Yeah.
Right. But, that all that's to say, it was still a very cute and just happy-go-lucky song.
Yeah.
And I feel like this is something that it's a little bit shorter than some of the other stuff we've been playing. So, this on loop, it's not the type of thing that when you put it on loop, it's just like, oh man, I just want to like stop listening to the song. I'm going to turn the music off. Like
right.
This is, good enough to kind of keep you in there, and non-invasive enough to just kind of be good background music.
Yeah, I can agree with that. Yeah. I don't think I've played any Pokemon Pinball.
Neither have I.
Oh, okay.
I've seen them. I just for all my love of pinball, I've never really kind of cared about any of the Pokemon side stuff.
Sure.
I barely played a bunch of the Pokemon mainline games. Like I haven't played any of the recent ones. I think I stopped around like Black and White 1 or 2. But yeah, it looks fairly cute. Just like there are. Just like, where Pokemon always comes out with 2 versions, in this case, Ruby and Sapphire or Gold and Silver, stuff like that.
Yeah.
It is both in one box, so it's not like 2 different games.
Okay. Which is smart, because nobody's going to buy 2 different pinball games.
Yeah, no. Yeah. There's not enough here to warrant that.
No.
So instead, there is a Sapphire board and a Ruby board, basically. And there's also different game modes, like catch 'em mode, where the ball is a Pokeball and you're hitting it around, trying to like hit different Pokemon and capture them. And
fun.
Stuff. Yeah, so like this is one of the first video pinball games that we're talking about that's kind of adding something new to the pinball genre, but also something that like you wouldn't really see in a real life table. Like you're not going to be knocking a ball around and catching Pokemon.
Well,
I guess you could do something with like little pop-ups on the table, but it's animated in such a way that like it feels like you are tossing a Pokeball around to catch these animals.
I will say Sonic Spinball also had stuff like that.
That's right, because it's not just
you could jump,
like Sonic.
you could move around and jump.
It's actually Sonic.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
right.
But that's still really cool, and I feel like that kind of makes me lean towards wanting to play it more than not.
Yeah, no, I mean after reading about this game, they're pretty popular. There was a original Red and Blue. I think it was just called Pokemon Pinball. I don't think they called it Red and Blue. But.
Yes, and that was the one that had a battery in it so that it would rumble, if I recall.
Yes, I think so.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's this one, and there are a handful of Pokemon pinball games, so it might be worth checking them out. The original one, actually, rather than being red and blue, it looks more like yellow to me because Pokemon is very prominently featured.
Yeah, Pikachu's like color. Dead center.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So it's
neat.
It's pretty neat, and the whole catch mode thing, and then there's also like an evolution mode. That can be activated. Yeah, let's see. Catch mode, when activated, starts a 2-minute window of opportunity where the player can attempt to capture a Pokemon. Evolution mode, when activated, starts a 2-minute window of opportunity in which the player selects a captured Pokemon and then attempts to evolve it into another form. Only way to do that, let's see. Is the only way to add, the player, there it is. Only, there are up to 7 targets on the red board, 6 on the blue board, but only 3 of them have items in them and needed to evolve a Pokemon, with the others creating a time-wasting sequence before the player can hit targets again. So if you hit the target with an item, the item appears in the playfield, and then you have to collect it. And once you have the 3 items, the hole in the center of the board opens up, you sink the ball in the hole, and you evolve the Pokemon.
Oh, okay. All right. Neat.
Yeah. Pretty interesting gameplay elements to add to these, and the Game Boy Color one looks pretty good. The Game Boy Advance one, actually, I think it looks. Obviously it looks better, but I think it looks a lot nicer. Like if I were going to play one of these, I'd play the Ruby and Sapphire one.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, pretty well reviewed too. So these composers, Kazuya Suyama, go first. They started with So So they're credited on 6 games, but only one of them for sound composition, and that would be Pokemon Pinball, Ruby and Sapphire. Everything else, Pokemon Ruby, Sapphire, Fire Red, Leaf Green, and Emerald version. All of those, that's all the same generation on the GBA.
Okay.
They are listed for special thanks. And then Ayumi Sano just has this one credit.
Oh, okay then.
So very, very simple.
Yeah. Looks like we're getting a call from inside the booth.
Calls coming from inside the booth.
That's right. It looks like it's our producer, Janine, who also happens to be a Metroid. Janine, we missed you. What's going on? What's up? What did she say? I can't make it out.
Well, I mean, you can probably tell she's a little ticked off by just the tone, but
yeah,
she's not not particularly happy that we haven't been paying much attention to her lately. I'm sorry, Janine.
Sorry, Janine. We've just been so busy. You know, we just had 100 episodes, and you were there, and it's not like you're not here. Somebody's got to produce this thing.
Yeah. I mean, heck, we even missed May's Patreon show.
That's it.
Things were crazy.
Yeah.
So,
how can we make it up to you?
Of course, yeah. I mean, are there Metroid pinball games?
There is.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Is there just the one, or?
Yeah.
Oh,
that's it.
All right then. I guess which track?
Okay, we could do that. All right, so Metroid Prime Pinball, which came out in the DS in 2005, and this track is going to be Space Pirate Frigate, also known as Brinstar, and this is composed by Kenji Yamamoto and Masaru Tajima. Hey, thanks for joining us back on XVGM Radio. That was Metroid Prime Pinball, which came out on the Nintendo DS in 2005. That was Space Pirate Frigate Brinstar, and that was by Kenji Yamamoto and Masaru Tajima.
Very, very cool rendition of that theme. I mean, it feels somewhere to me in between like the original Brinstar theme, or it's the original Brinstar theme and like a metal cover. Like it's definitely not like heavy metal by any means, but this feels
hard rock.
Yeah. Like this feels like a happy medium, which is interesting because I feel like I usually only hear one end or the other of that spectrum, like the original or like the chiptune style, or like Lame Genie or anybody else that has covered that does like the metal covers. So this was kind of a nice change of pace from what I'm used to.
Yeah, I mean, there's parts of this I love, and there's parts I don't. I will point out that some people that are listening may be like, wait a minute, I've heard this before. This was featured on some of the later Smash Brothers games.
I was going to mention that too, yeah.
But they put like some audio in the beginning, like some voiceover, where they're just like, Samus is doing stuff or whatever. I can't remember what he says, but it's a guy saying like, Samus is doing something. Samus is making grilled cheese, and you're the only one that could stop her, like something like that. So, yeah, that's where this one is more prominently known, is from Smash Brothers. But no, it came out here first. I have really fond memories of playing this one when it came out on the DS. First off, it comes with a Rumble Pack when you bought it brand new, and it was designed to be used for this game. So you pop that. It's looked exactly like a Game Boy Advance game. So you pop that in the Game Boy Advance cartridge slot.
That's right. Yeah, I remember that.
And then you play the game, and it rumbles, and it's super fun. But I have really strong memories of playing this with my buddy Jared. He and I used to have our DSs in the same room, so we'd hang out together in like at his house or my house, and we'd just sit around and play this, and we try to one up each other's scores. So yeah, it was a lot of fun. It's a super fun pinball game that's very underrated in my opinion. But the way that it's designed is there's different tables, and the different tables are all based on different like levels in Metroid Prime. So you're playing as Samus in her morph ball, and you're getting launched all over the place and whatnot. And it gets really hard at points where like there'll be these enemies that spawn, and then they come towards you, like, and the music will change, and it'll get like super serious, and you have to launch the ball at them to kill them.
Right.
And if you're too slow on the draw, you won't be able to get them all, and then you lose a ball, and then you gotta start from scratch. So it's really fun. Yeah, definitely recommended.
Yeah, I remember when this came out. I don't think I had it.
No.
Was there like a demo version of this?
You're probably thinking of Metroid Prime Hunters, which did have a demo.
Yeah,
Yes.
That's what it was. Okay.
Yep.
So I'm like, I feel like I played a Metroid pinball game, but I do not remember buying Metroid Prime Pinball.
So Kenji Yamamoto and Masaru Tajima worked on this one, starting off with Kenji, who's a little bit more famous. Their first game was Mike Tyson's Punch-Out!, where they were the composer. They are a long-time Nintendo composer, doing games all the way back to Super Metroid, one of the more famous ones, almost every Metroid game after the first one. So Metroid Prime, Metroid Zero Mission, Metroid Prime 3, Metroid Prime 2, the list goes on and on. But yeah, they contributed in some way, shape, or form to most Metroid games. They were the music director of Metroid Dread, which came out in 2021.
Okay.
So yeah, they've got a bunch of games, all for Nintendo for the most part. It's all just great music. He's a pretty good composer, and he stayed true to the Metroid style and format. So I know that Hip Tanaka gets kind of the label for like the Metroid guy, but honestly, Kenji Yamamoto spent way more time with Metroid than he ever did. But Masaru Tajima started off audio-wise with Galactic Pinball, which has an incredible soundtrack for the Virtual Boy. So we may end up doing a full episode on that at some point. Mobile Golf for the Game Boy Color, F-Zero Maximum Velocity for the Game Boy Advance in 2001, WarioWare Touched. I always used to call that WarioWare Touched I don't know why.
Because you're a contrarian.
Yes. Fossil Fighters on the DS. Dr. Luigi on the Wii U. And latest game was Metroid Samus Returns on the 3DS. They did music support for that one.
Okay.
So that's it as far as audio goes. And that's it as far as this little Metroid pick that Janine picked. So thanks again, Janine.
Yeah, good choice.
Yeah.
All right, so my last pick for this episode is going to be called Yoku's Island Express. This came out in 2018 for PC, PS4, Switch, and Xbox One. The track is called Letting Off Steam, and it was composed by Jesse Harlan. Hey, welcome back. That was my last pick for this pinball games focused episode. Yoku's Island Express came out in 2018 on PC, PS4, Switch, and Xbox One. The track was called Letting Off Steam, and it was composed by Jesse Harlan.
Dude, this was great. I really like this one.
I saved this for last because this is literally my favorite of what I've picked.
Okay.
And also the game itself is fairly interesting. I just bought it for the Switch.
Nice.
But yeah, this track had a lot of interesting things going on. For one, it felt very atmospheric and less so like what I would expect a pinball game to feel like, whereas most of the stuff that we've been hearing has been more upbeat, fast-paced, stuff like that. This has been more kind of like, ooh, something's going on.
Yeah, sneaky.
Yeah. The things that kind of really stood out to me were the mixture of what felt like more modern kind of synthy sounds with that piano, which sounds like it's coming from a recording from like a Victrola. Like there's like some crackling and popping there that makes it feel old-timey.
Yeah. I really like that. But I think the thing that stood out most for me on this one was the kind of pitter-pattery kind of drums, along with the use of sound effects with the steam sound, like the psh.
Yep.
It really reminded me of like Nine Inch Nails.
Yeah. There's a little bit of industrial here, I feel.
For sure. But either way, I really like this one. I'm very confused on the game though, because I'm reading the description on it and I'm like, wait, what? It's a Metroidvania platform pinball game?
Yeah. Yeah, so this one, I feel like it fits our theme, although it doesn't 100% fit because it is not exclusively a pinball game.
Right.
It is a platformer that uses pinball elements to do some things. So it's a side-scrolling platformer, and you can move left and right, but there is no jumping. In segments where there would be jumping and where there's like kind of puzzly sort of segments, there are flippers that you control, and the character Yoku, who is a dung beetle, also happens to have a ball attached to him. So when you get to these parts where you can't... When you get to these parts where you can't jump, there's a flipper, so you get over the flipper, and then you hit that, and then there are like power-ups and things that you can pick up on the quote-unquote board, and you need to get through that in order to progress into another platforming section, and the platforming is done in, like you said, like an Igavania type of a style.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. It's a big open world. You're on an island.
Very unique.
Very, which is, again, one of the reasons that I picked this one, because I thought that they were doing something new and interesting with the pinball quote-unquote genre. It's, again, not specifically a pinball game, but it is a game where you can play pinball, and not like as a mini game. Like the pinball features are part of, like, required to play the game.
A large part of it, right. Okay, that's neat.
Yeah,
I'll allow it.
Yeah. and like I said, the music on this, like the soundtrack is actually really good. Like, this is definitely my favorite song on the soundtrack, but the other songs are equally as good.
Cool.
And then just based on what I saw and what I've read and what I've heard, so I was like, I'm gonna play this over this coming weekend while I'm at an anime convention.
Yeah, that's a no-brainer. I'll have to pick this up. Cool.
I thought this was funny. The name of the developer, this is the developer's first game. The name of the developer is Villa Gorilla. So I was like, that's cool.
Villa Gorilla.
Yeah,
it.
Yeah, and it was published by Team 17. So
right, they're the guys that do the Worms games, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Cool.
So this looks super cute.
Yeah, it looks charming.
Jesse Harlan is the composer on this, as I mentioned. They started back in 2000 doing music and orchestration on Space Debris on the PlayStation. There's a whole lot of Star Wars games in the mid-2000s. Star Wars Republic Commando, Star Wars Episode 3 Revenge of the Sith, Star Wars Galaxy Total Experience, a whole lot of that. Battlefront 2. And then this is another thing that they appear to be kind of famous for, the Thrillville game on the PSP in 2006. They engineered, produced, and wrote and arranged a whole bunch of the music on that. So there's just a ton of credits for all that stuff. Game came out on the PSP, I said, also came out on the PlayStation 2 in 2006. Then there was Thrillville Off the Rails in 2007. I'm just going to get stuck on some of these, so I'm going to speed up to the most recent stuff. Aside from Yoku's Island Express in 2018, the most recent game is in 2020 called Mafia Definitive Edition. And they composed the original score on the Mafia games.
Oh, okay. Cool.
So, yeah, pretty neat guy. I've not heard the name before, but I definitely heard of a lot of these games, so.
Yeah.
All right, what are you closing us out with here?
All right. This one is pretty awesome. It's from Devil's Crush, the TurboGrafx 16 game that came out in 1990. This is Bonus Stage 3, and it's by Masanobu Tsukamoto and Toshiaki Sakota. Hey, you're back, and that was my last pick, Devil's Crush, the TurboGrafx 16 game, which came out in 1990. And this track that we picked was Bonus Stage 3 by Masanobu Tsukamoto and Toshiaki Sakota. Just real quick about the composers. There were a few different sources for Toshiaki Sakota, but only one source, which was Wikipedia, for Masanobu Tsukamoto. So I'm not 100% sold that he did compose for it, but they did some other games, which we'll get to in a minute, that kind of make me think that they did.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. Anyways, what did you think about this one?
This one was really kind of neat. I liked the like it was very fast paced. It felt a little old world to me just because of the way that they did some of those runs. But I mean, aside from I think being one of the shorter tracks that we have here, this is also different in a good way.
Yeah. I also really like those runs. It's exciting. It leans more towards like a Japanese action game music than anything, I'd say.
Yeah, it reminds me of some Final Fantasy battle music. Actually,
yes, yeah.
I was
absolutely.
like, there's something in my head, and I don't know what it is, and yet it's one of the Final Fantasies.
Yeah. But this one is a pinball game that is more styled like an occult type thing. There's lots of skeletons and demons and stuff like that. There's this weird snake woman that is in the center, and she's kind of got like a derpy face when you hit her, like with the balls. There's different sections of this that will give you 4 paddles instead of 2 paddles, and they'll be like side to side, so there'll be like 2 paddles on the left, 2 paddles on the right. But yeah, this one is very similar to like the Metroid Prime Pinball in the sense that you're constantly trying to defeat enemies as you like move up the board and stuff like that. So it's pretty neat. This also got a port to the Genesis, and it was retitled Dragon's Fury or Devil Crash MD in Japan. However, every version of this game that came to North America had the more like occult themes removed. Like the hexagrams have been changed to like stars, and the coffins, if they had crucifixes on them, they got removed and changed to something else. So yeah, I haven't played this one, but it looks great. And I think it'd be fun to sit down and play this one.
Yeah. I mean, this is an earlier one too. Like I feel like we've kind of gradually gone from older to newer, and then this kind of just brought us right back to that like late 80s, early 90s era. And it sounds like it did some pretty interesting things even that early in the game.
Yeah, I mean, it's got some pretty advanced features for a pinball game. Like it even has tilting in the game, where you can press the button. If you keep pressing it to tilt the pinball machine, it'll say tilting, and the flippers will stop working, and you won't be able to use a ball, and you'll lose a ball for a round. So, but there's all different bonus rooms and different targets that you can hit in it, and it just seems like a lot of fun. And it's got a great soundtrack. There's a lot of really good music in it, so well worth checking out.
Nice.
So Masanobu Tsukamoto started off audio-wise with Randar 2: Revenge of Death, the MSX game from 1989. They also started doing work on the TurboGrafx 16 with games like Blazing Lasers, and then they moved over to do NES stuff like Gunnak. They did some ports for Puyo Puyo on various different systems. Their latest credit was on the GameCube in 2002. It's Evolution Worlds. They were a sound composer on that.
Oh, okay.
So Toshiaki Sakota started off with Alien Crush, and that's the predecessor to this game. Okay. There's another game called Jackie Crush, I believe it's called, and that's one of the ones that I thought Masanobu Tsukamoto got credited for as far as audio goes, and that's absolutely correct. Jackie Crush is the 3rd game in the Crush Pinball series, and it also has like a demon kind of horror themed. From what I gather, it's not a port of Devil Crush. It's just a totally new game with the same concept in the same series.
Okay.
So that's kind of the reason why I was like, maybe they did do composition on this game. So I don't know.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I mean, considering it was kind of hard to find sources, that makes sense.
Yeah. But they continued working on a variety of different games throughout the 2000s. Wizardry, Proving Grounds of the Mad Overlord in 2003. And then they did, in 2004, Riviera, The Promised Land, Star Soldier in 2005 on the PSP. Their final game was Baroque, which came out in 2008 on the Wii. However, it got a port to the Switch in 2020, so they're credited for that as well.
Gotcha. Yep.
So that's our pinball episode, and now we come to the time where we talk about what our favorite video pinball track was from this episode, and this is going to be a tough one.
Overall, I'm still liking my Yoku's Island Express track, but your Metroid Prime pinball, as you mentioned, it was kind of also used in Super Smash Brothers, I think Brawl, and some of the later games, so it's definitely something that I've heard a number of times, but it was still unexpected, and I really, really enjoyed that.
Yeah, I think the Yoku's Island Express is going to be my pick for this one as well, just because it came out of left field for me. I mean, it was so unique and different than everything else that we heard that I thought it was kind of like a breath of fresh air. So I got to go with that one. But man, right behind it is that Sonic Spinball track. Loved it.
Yep.
Yeah.
But what about you, listener?
Yes.
What did you like? We want to hear.
Let us know.
Let us know in the comments or in our Discord or on Twitter.
Somewhere. Smoke signals.
Yeah. Instagram's cool too.
Yeah.
So, we'd like to take a moment to thank our Patreon patrons, without whom this show's continued improvement would be impossible. They are Cam Worma, Jordan and Anson Davis, Kung Fu Carlito of the Heroes 3 podcast, Scott McElhone, Chris Myers, Brad Austin, Chris Murray, Llama Adam, Marcus Stewart, Scott Brackett, Nick Davis, and Ryan McPherson.
If you would like to become a patron, you can sign up at patreon.com/XVGM Radio. There you can see the different tiers as well. Just $1 gets you a thank you and access to our monthly live shows.
You can visit our website, xvgmradio.com, where you can listen to all the episodes and learn more about your hosts, as well as any of our guests or composers that we've had on the show.
If you'd like to reach out to us, you can always email us at xvgmradio@gmail.com.
If you like what you've heard, please consider giving us a review on iTunes.
You can join our Facebook group and chat with other VGM lovers at www.facebook.com/groups/XVGM Radio, where we talk about everything from current game news to sharing awesome VGM tracks or just talking about the podcast itself.
You can also find us on Twitter and Instagram. Our handle on both those sites is @XVGM Radio.
If you don't have any other social media or just want to try something unique, check us out on our Discord group chat. Links in the show notes. All right, Justin, in 1 month, we're coming back with episode 104. What are we doing?
So episode 104 is going to be all about Shantae.
That's right, the half genie hero herself. We're going to tackle all of her games, play some tunes from them. Large majority of those tracks are going to be by Jake Kaufman, except for the newest game. So it's going to be an awesome time. I've been wanting to do a spotlight on this series for a long time, so it's finally happening, and that'll come out in August. But in the meantime, in July...
Yeah, we have 2 other things going on. So, as always, we have an XVGM After Dark that we'll be doing live and a special patron live show. The XVGM After Dark episode will be on the 18th, so shortly after this comes out.
Yep.
We'll be listening to the Power Stone vinyl that you have.
Yes, on the Sega Dreamcast. So, yeah, Power Stone, great soundtrack, lots of really cool stuff.
Such a good game.
Yeah. The After Dark, you don't have to pay anything to join. That's free on Justin's Twitch channel.
That is twitch.tv/shock83j16.
Yes, and we post it in the Discord. There'll be an event in there, so you can go and grab that. So anybody can join that, but for the live show, you do have to be a Patreon member, so head over to the Patreon and join today. We'd love to have you aboard.
Yes, please.
Yeah. All right. Well, that'll do it for us here at XVGM Radio. This is Mike.
And Justin.
Signing off for XVGM Radio.
This is a Famicom Japan exclusive. This is a Famicom...
Samus is making grilled cheese, and you're the only one that can stop her. You know, like something like that. So
I'm not going to stop her. I want that grilled cheese.
Oh, okay. All right. I respect that.
Do you not like grilled cheese?
No, I do. I do. It can't be too cheesy though. One piece of cheese and you're good. Yeah, like no more than one, because then it gets too cheesy.
Teetotaler for cheese?
No, then it
two
gets
slices of cheese minimum.
Nah, I'm gonna go one slice of cheese is like the sweet spot. You do 2 slices, okay, that's all right. Anything more than 2 is like unedible to me. So, yeah. Anywho, pick up the phone. Hold on, let's redo that.
I was gonna say, did you do that on purpose?
No.
I was like, what are you going for?
What are you going for? Like Smokey McSmokey?